Hello again, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and corruption is the crux of our next discussion. Now, corruption is indeed one of Nigeria's biggest challenges. Despite government's effort to tackle this problem, it remains a big obstacle preventing Nigeria from achieving its potential. Now, Nigeria dropped 5 places in the 2021 Corruption Perceptions Index, ranking 154 out of 180 countries. Over the years, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission exposed top officials and citizens responsible for stealing billions of naira. The war against corruption is one of the pillars of the Buhari administration. The big question, though, is how much difference this administration has made in fighting the anti-graft war. Joining me to discuss this via Zoom is the Deputy Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Anti-Corruption. Honorable Bagos Dachung, thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
President Buhari sent a bill to repeal the Money Laundering Prohibition Act, and earlier in the month of May, the House passed the bill. We understand that this bill, now that it has been passed, subject, of course, to the assenting of it by the president, this bill will also create a special office, so to speak, to enhance EFCC's war on graft. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, well, I would say the bills that were passed in the House that have to do with proceeds of crime, secondly, money laundering with prevention and prohibition, terrorism, which has to do with prevention and prohibition as well. Those bills were already and has already been signed by the president a couple of days ago to enable Nigeria to be part of the International Charter Task Force against Financial Crimes and Terrorism, which we had a deadline, and with the bilateral relationship we have now, Nigeria is a fully member of that task force, of which over 36 countries will now share information and intelligence on proceeds of crime, money laundering, and terrorism. Those are the efforts that the House in recent past that we have to reconvene because of the importance in fighting corruption that the House have been able to put in place. So now those 3 bills that has been passed into law and signed by the president will now give Nigeria a better chance to be able to track proceeds of crime, to be able to track monies that have been laundered, and to be able to track those that are financing acts of terrorism in Nigeria within the cross-border and within the African region, and especially those areas that the Lake Chad, those areas that we have had serious Boko Haram crisis, because we know that why this act of terrorism is spreading, that some people are sponsoring it. And if we don't have the necessary laws in place to be able to work with other countries to help us track and trace those that are sponsoring terrorism in Nigeria, then it's going to be very difficult for Nigeria alone to be able to do that. So those are the reasons for that.
All right. Thanks for that clarity you have provided. As we set a tone for our discussion this morning. But concerns still linger over, the independence of anti-corruption agencies, the EFCC, the ICPC, and the like, especially the issue of bridging the funding gap. How do these laws address these concerns?
Yeah, well, the independence, the National Assembly has given the anti-corruption agencies the independence to be able to address most of these issues, to fight corruption and so on and so forth. The funding challenging, yes, it's there, which to the National Assembly, we have tried as much as possible to see that all the proceeds of crime and all that we have been able to put in the budget for these agencies have been judiciously used. But again, the high level of corruption that is being found, the anti-corruption agencies usually don't have the sufficient funds to be able to tackle most of these issues. And we looked at it as part of the political will, because if the anti-corruption agencies need so much funds to be able to address a lot of issues, and the executive did not allocate the necessary funds when presenting the budget, and when we try to work on the budget again and it becomes a problem, you see, so that is where the gap needs to be breached, because yes, funding is needed, but again, we need the political will to be able to have so much funds for these anti-corruption agencies to carry out the anti-corruption activities. Mind you, most of these activities that are being perpetrated, we usually wait for it to happen before people are being arrested. But the best way to be able to fight corruption is prevention. And once we be able to look into prevention, and that's why the second bill on money laundering, it has to do with prevention and prohibition. And so when we start looking at the aspect of prevention, it's going to reduce so much burden, and it's going to be able to address a lot of issues.
You are, of course, speaking in your capacity as the deputy chairman of the crucial committee that handles anti-corruption and other activities. I understand that indeed you have been engaging with MDAs in your work and also in oversight functions. But then these MDAs have also been accused of frustrating efforts of the House, efforts of your committee. Where do you stand in this argument? And indeed, do they really hamper your anti-corruption efforts?
Yeah, you know, one of the major cardinal role of the National Assembly is to carry out oversight. And carrying out oversight is to ensure transparency and accountability in governance, in government business, to ensure that what has been allocated to every MDA it's duly utilized. And truth to be told, that we have found problems in one way or the other. But when we found some problems and we lay out down our reports on the floor of the House, or there are some resolutions that come in as a motion and being sent to government and especially the executive, you find some certain level of laxity to be able to address some of these issues. And that's why I said that the political will to actually and to really carry out this. A lot of MDAs are involved in one thing or the other that it's very glaring, and when the National Assembly is trying to investigate through oversight, it now has to, it turns out to be that the National Assembly is witch hunting the executive. But most of our activities, after passing some laws, or most of the laws, our activity again, it's after the oversight is to advise government that, look, this is what the law says. Follow the law and do the right thing. And if most of those things have been addressed by the executive, I can assure you that most of the issues of corruption that we are facing today couldn't have come into play. Mind you, there is no country in the world that does not have corrupt activities or tendencies. But what helped most of these developed countries is that there is an adequate system in place that checkmate most of these corrupt activities. That even before any of the anti-corruption agencies in those places could come and arrest, immediately whosoever is the MDA, the system in place checkmates the person automatically. But here it's very difficult to track funds that you see people living above their livelihoods. You see a director or an assistant director having 60 houses, the cars that they are riding, or even some politicians having connivance with some of the executives. These are issues that there is no system that can check this immediately before it gets far. For instance, the issue of the Accountant General today with about 80 billion. If there was an adequate system before even it gets to 80 billion, when it is at 1 billion, the issue will be addressed immediately. And we believe, and that was why we currently passed this proceed of crime bill, the money laundering bill, and that of terrorism.
You talk about
most of these funds are transbordered.
Honorable
so once we
Dachung,
have this international relationship, it is going to help a lot.
Honorable Dachung, but you talk about absence of political will on the part of government, and you also talk about the advisory role that legislators like yourself, also play in helping to sanitize the system, especially where FDAs are involved. But, surely your role goes beyond advisory. What's stopping lawmakers, federal lawmakers, in the scope of our discussion? What's stopping?
We have three tripartites. You just said lawmakers. We make the laws, and when we make the laws, we oversight appropriation, what we have appropriated to government to be able to carry out government business. But we don't have the power to be able to go to go and jail or to arrest or so on and so forth. But when we see some leakages during our oversight, we draw the attention of government that, look, this thing is not according to the law. And when we draw the attention of government in most of those areas, it now takes government another cycle of another oversight. There are agencies that when we go for oversight, we still go and find out that the same problem is in place. So when the only area that the legislature usually exercise its power is that when this same agency comes for appropriation, we'll say, well, you did not address these issues, so we are not going to appropriate funds for you this year. But if once we start doing such, the executive will start looking at the House as if we are hunting the House, or the opposition is trying to fight government in power. But issues that have come, I can tell you that the House have been so serious on oversight businesses. But taking out our resolution and advices from this oversight has been a problem.
Right. So having said this, Honorable, having said this, are you now coming from a position of power or weakness?
Well, I would say both. Power in the sense that we have the power to be able to carry out oversight, we have the power to be able to sanction, but weakness in the sense that we don't have the power to be able to execute those resolutions and motions or whatever that we've been able to advise to government. So those are areas that when we start looking at governance, in giving our dividends of democracy, not on personal basis, when we start checking at our conscience, what our conscience is telling us to do the right thing and putting the right system in place, then that is where the weakness area you will not see. But because of our role in governance, that's where you might look at it as if that's the weakness part of it.
All right. But still talking about this crucial role now, I'm afraid we've run out of time, Honorable Abagos Dachung. There are, of course, many areas of concern, and we sadly do not have more time to continue this conversation, but we thank you very much for giving us more clarity on some of these issues.
Yeah, thank you so much. And our belief is that with the passion that the President has signed, the Proceed of Crime Recovery and Management Act 2002, the Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022 as well, and the Terrorism Prevention and if government and the relevant agencies will take this very seriously, I can assure you that 50% of our problems will be solved. If we can start tracing the people that are terrorizing us, people that are laundering our monies outside, then half of our problems will be solved.
We thank you once again for your insights and wish you all the best, even as you go on now and prepare for today's election.
Thank you.